People come to Lake Norman afraid of the wrong thing. They watch the deep water for a shape, a fin breaking the surface. The creature the locals nicknamed years ago and printed on gift shop shirts. That is the danger they were taught to look for. It is not the one that takes them. This is the largest lake in North Carolina, more than 30,000 acres of open water an hour above Charlotte, with over 500 miles of shoreline. People call it the Inland Sea, and it has quietly drowned more people than any other lake in the state. In just the 11 years between 2012 and 2023, 28 people died in this one lake, more than in any other lake in North Carolina. The ones it takes almost never see it coming, because the thing that kills on this water has no shape you could point a boat toward. It is the water itself. It is the cold, dark underneath it. Two things are worth understanding about Lake Norman before you ever put a boat on it. The first is how the water kills. The second is what the water keeps. Neither one is the monster on the shirts. Start with what this place was before it was a lake. 60 years ago, there was no lake here at all. A river valley ran through here instead, the Catawba River winding through farmland and mill towns, with churches and roads and low bridges and family land that had been worked for generations. Then the power company came. In 1963, Duke Power closed the gates on Cowans Ford Dam, a wall of concrete that stands about 130 feet high and runs better than a mile long. And the Catawba River began to back up over all of it. The power station behind that wall came alive late in 1963, and the turbines have not gone quiet since. The water rose through the fields. It rose over the roads. It covered the mills and the churches and the bridges across 4 counties, and it did not stop until it had made that inland sea. They named the lake after Norman Cock, a president of the power company. Almost no one who swims here now thinks about the valley that is still down there under their boats. That is the first thing the lake hides: the depth. In places, Lake Norman drops more than 100 feet, and the deepest water never really warms. The trap that sets up down there even has a name. In the heat of summer, the warm top layer and the cold, deep layer stop mixing altogether, and a line forms between them called the thermocline. Above that line, the surface can sit in the 80s on a July afternoon, warm as bathwater. Below it, only a few feet down, the cold sits there and waits, sealed off, holding its temperature like something kept in a cellar. A hand trailed off the side of a boat feels only the warm skin of the lake. The trap begins where that warm hand cannot reach, and a diving body finds it in a single second. That gap between the warm top and the cold underneath is the killer. Here is what the cold actually does to a body. A strong swimmer goes off the back of a boat, drops through that warm layer, and hits the cold. The body reacts before the mind can. The chest clamps. The throat gasps on its own, and the first breath pulls in water instead of air. They call it cold water shock, and it does not care how well you swim. It happens in seconds, in bright sunshine, to people who swim just fine, in front of families who were laughing one moment and screaming the next. The calendar has a cruelty of its own here. June is the deadliest month on North Carolina's waters, because that is when the summer crowds arrive and the surface warms while the deep stays cold. The boats come back out. The children come off the school buses and onto the docks. The people who have not been in a lake since last summer Forget what waits a few feet under the warm skin of it. Every June, the same pattern repeats along the same stretches of shoreline. A holiday weekend fills the coves with pontoons and rope swings and floating coolers. The sun sits high over glassy water, and somewhere on that water, a swimmer who did everything right slips under and does not come back up. And the toll is not Lake Norman alone. Across the whole Charlotte area, counting the lakes and the rivers and the farm ponds together, at least 173 people have drowned since 2005. This one lake is only the largest mouth in a region full of quiet water that has learned to swallow. And when someone goes under here, the people who come for them are not a rescue team. They are a recovery team. That is the quiet, terrible word the dive crews use for this lake. The water is so heavy with sediment that divers work almost blind, feeling along the bottom with their hands because their eyes are useless in the dark. They drag a heavy sonar unit back and forth across the lake bed for hours, reading a screen full of shapes that could be anything. Sunken Christmas trees, old tires, a car that has been down there for decades. One diver said there is so much on the bottom of this lake that mimics a human body, so many logs the right size and shape, that a search becomes hours of finding things that are not the person you came for. A single recovery can run through most of a day. Crews will tell you a body usually settles within about 1.5 times the depth of the water from where someone went under. On a lake this size, in water this dark, that is still a wide circle of nothing. The line tender works the rope hand over hand until blisters open on his palms. The family stands on the shore and watches what looks like chaos, a scatter of boats and ropes and radios with no order they can read. The lake keeps what goes into it, and it does not hand you a map to find it. If a story told this plainly is why you came here, a quiet subscribe keeps them coming. More lies under this water than most people will ever hear. Because the depth is only the first thing. The second is stranger, and it is the reason this lake unsettles the people who know it best. Lake Norman does not simply take people. It holds on to what falls into it, sometimes for a very long time, and it gives it back only when it is ready. In the summer of 1974, a small plane went down into the lake and simply vanished. No one was killed in it, but the plane itself dropped out of reach and out of memory, just gone into the dark water and forgotten. It sat on the bottom in about 90 feet of water for almost 40 years. Then, in 2013, a Charlotte Fire Department dive team ran a training exercise, sweeping the bottom with sonar to practice, and their screen lit up with the outline of an aircraft that no living person had seen since the 70s. The lake had kept it whole the entire time, 100 feet underwater that boats crossed every single day. People are harder to hold quietly. In February of 2023, a fisherman noticed a strange shape on his own sonar, the outline of a car resting on the bottom near Mountain Creek. When crews brought it up, it was an old car, and there were human remains inside. The car belonged to a woman who had gone missing 15 years earlier, in 2008. For 15 years, her family had no idea where she was. The lake knew the whole time. It had been holding her a short cast off a shoreline where people fished and swam and never once thought to look down. The lake keeps what goes into it, and it decides when you get it back. An old saying follows a much colder lake far to the north, that it never gives up its dead. People like to borrow that line for Lake Norman, and it is not quite true, because this lake does give them back. It just does it years later, on its own schedule, when a fisherman happens to pass over the right patch of bottom. That is somehow worse. The dead here are not gone. They are filed away in the dark, waiting. And it is not only planes and cars down there. When Duke Power flooded this valley, the crews did not clear everything out first. An old mill and the village that grew up around it, dozens of families, went under the water and stayed. So did a church camp from the 1930s. Down the shoreline, another old mill went under the same rising water, its walls left standing in the cold where no one would ever walk them again. The old roads went too. Stretches of old country highway still run along the lake bed, pavement leading down into the dark and simply ending. An old bridge still stands on the bottom of the lake, crumbling in the dark about 100 feet from the new bridge that carries cars over the water right now. And older ground than any of it lies down there. In 1781, a Revolutionary War battle was fought along this river, and on that muddy battlefield, a general named William Lee Davidson was shot dead. The same man Davidson College is named for. The ground where he fell is under the lake now, drowned beneath jet skis and pontoon boats. A whole buried country sits under the surface of Lake Norman, and the people floating on top of it are still watching the horizon for a monster. That monster has a long story, and it is worth telling just to set it down. The Catawba people carried old accounts of large snakes and leech-like things in the river, told long before any dam or any lake. When the valley filled in the 1960s, the sightings started up again over the new water, and early in the 2000s, a fan site gave the thing its friendly nickname and put it on the shirts. That is folklore, and folklore is fine. It is a good story for a summer dock. But the story looks up and out, toward a shape in the open water, while the real danger sits straight down and keeps its own quiet counsel. That is the thing about this lake. The danger everyone came to fear is a story. The creature is a nickname on a shirt, a little fun for the tourists, and there is nothing wrong with that. But it draws the eye up and out, toward the open surface, toward a shape that was never coming. The real thing is straight down. It is quiet, it is cold, and it has never once needed a shape to take a person. It only needs you to look the wrong way for a moment. If the quiet, true ones like this are why you came, a subscribe keeps them coming. The lake keeps what goes into it, and this South is full of lakes just like it. So you can come to Lake Norman. Millions of people do every summer, and most of them go home just fine. Enjoy the water in the daylight, wear the life jacket, even when the water looks like glass. But understand what you are floating on. Under that warm, calm surface is a drowned valley, 100 feet of cold and dark, and a lake that has taught itself to keep whatever falls in. The monster was never the thing you should have been watching for. The lake was. It always was.